Jim Donnelly is joining us. He is with Bangor Savings Bank. Good morning to you. So he's an expert we've been turning to several times here over the last few weeks when it comes to small business assistance. And the relief program as part of the CARES Act for small businesses is called the Payroll Protection Program. You've heard us probably talking about it in the last couple of weeks. And tomorrow is an important date for that program. Tell us why.
Tomorrow we open up applications under the SBA program for sole proprietors and self-employed people.
Right.
And so it's basically folks who don't have employees working for them, but are still affected nonetheless by the COVID shutdown. You
were saying, and we've talked to you probably 4 or 5 times now, that we're all learning together. I mean, we're moving forward on this without the playbook in every way, in every aspect of this response to the coronavirus crisis. But in particular, when it comes to the language or things that may be omitted from the SBA guidelines, you've got to learn these things as you go along. So I was on a call yesterday with a lot of small business owners, and one of the questions from a person in Augusta, he wants to know if he doesn't issue paychecks to himself as a sole proprietor, how does he prove that he has a loss here?
Yeah, and it's a real challenge because a lot of the tax returns, if you grab that, they're going to show a loss. So how do you do that?
How do you provide relief when you're using tax returns? And that was his question. He owns apartments, not too many, a few apartment buildings, I guess, and nobody can pay their rent. I think he said the majority of them. Nationally, we know it's 1/3 of people.
Yes.
In the last week could not pay their rent. And so he's not coming down on these people. He's like, I couldn't knock on their door at this point in time, you know? So I need relief.
So you need to just be able to show some documentation that you've taken some sort of wage. If you haven't cut a paycheck, per se, to yourself, but you have issued checks to yourself for expenses, for living expenses, and go through as close to what would be a wage as possible. So, and you got to make sure that after we use it, that at least 75% of it is to cover that expense.
Okay.
In addition to some of the other items like utilities and mortgage interest or rent and leases.
Yeah. No.
So I think as long as somebody can provide some documentation of how they came to that wage, we'll try to help them from there.
Now, you're going to require the documentation as the lender, or are you just going to pass along the SBA guidelines? So who do you have to satisfy?
Both, because we're required to do kind of a quick check to make sure it's a reasonable one. So we had one that was an error. It was a 2-person shop, and they submitted for $6 million.
Oh.
So obviously that was a mistake that we helped catch early and fix so that they would be able to apply for the right amount of money.
Desiree thought she was in trouble for applying for $2 million. But.
No. I would.
Well, you guys are worth it. But we're trying to just help people make sure that on the back end when we go for forgiveness, that they actually can get the maximum forgiveness.
Yeah.
Because there is a chance that if the funds aren't used the right way, that it winds up being a loan.
Yeah.
And as we've talked, most people are trying not to get more debt at this time because they're nervous.
Yeah.
So
of course.
We just want to help on the front end to make sure that when we get to the forgiveness piece in 7 or 8 weeks, that we actually get them the right amount.
Gotcha.
So that's the timeline, about 7 or 8 weeks for the forgiveness piece.
Well, that's when you can start. I think the use of the funds has to be out by June 30. And so, if you back into that, it's apply for the money that fits the criteria, and all can be out by and used by June 30th.
Well, SBA loans are traditionally 4 to 6 weeks, right, for approval?
Yeah, they can be. We have a status called the preferred lender.
Yeah.
So the preferred lenders, we can actually get them done in the same time frame as a normal loan.
All right. Well, I'm only using that as a benchmark because I got to imagine we're going 12, 16, who knows how many weeks for this kind of...
With the surge that it will be.
Yeah. I know you're getting inundated here, but I would suppose that This piece of the PPP program is probably in some ways more confusing and more time consuming than the small business, the conventional entities, as opposed to the sole proprietors. You were just talking about how many documents and how folks have to pull that together and how many questions. It seems more straightforward in some ways for these corporate entities and LLCs versus these sole proprietors.
Yeah, so the scale, the larger small businesses usually have somebody on staff that helps with the bookkeeping and has it organized in a good fashion. And when you're doing more of the doing yourself, so if you're a self-employed contractor, you're answering the phones, you're getting out and doing the work, and billing and stuff is what you do when you're too tired to be awake.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's collecting that bookkeeping off the system you have and trying to pull it together is harder. And so we're going to try to really be a little bit more attentive and helpful.
That's what I thought you'd say. You're more hands-on anyway as an organization, and when it comes to these sole proprietors with these myriad questions, you're going to be right there to support them. Desiree's burning question is, will there be enough money by the time these sole proprietors...
Yeah, I mean,
so last time you asked me that, I did the dodge.
Yes.
And the way the funds are being committed, as of yesterday morning, it was about $80 billion of the $350 billion out. So it is getting out the door pretty quickly.
Uh-huh.
But today, our Senator Collins, is introducing a bill in the Senate that will add $250 billion more to the fund.
Yes, we've been following that, and that call last night was actually with Senator Collins and somebody from SBA. And you should have been on that call. You provided a lot of comfort to some of these small business owners.
I listened, and I'm a big fan, and I will say the Senator and her staff have checked in with me.
Great.
Probably almost each night to see if there's anything they could do to help.
Fantastic.
That's good.
When they rave about certain local banks, community banks, I'm sure you rank fairly highly among them. And we've got a question, Jim, for you, if I can bring it on a caller, if you don't mind.
Sure.
All right. Hi, good morning. You're on with Jim.
My name is Amy. I'm assistant manager for Oakland Taxi in Oakland, Maine. And we've taken a big hit. We're a small business. My boss has been looking for a bank or something to do the payroll loan or whatever it is. I went on the SBA website and they said to go through. They had a list of banks, and he doesn't bank with them, so they denied him. So shouldn't banks be helping the small businesses this program rather than saying, "Oh, because you don't have an account with us, you can't get one"?
That's been a problem across the country, right, Jim?
Because not all banks are offering this.
We are taking new clients on, and we're serving our clients.
So you're doing both.
Wow.
So you're prioritizing, I'm sure, your current clients. And a lot of banks, like the large ones, Bank of America and maybe Wells Fargo and Citibank, were ranking their customers. You know, the bigger they are, the more products they use, the more attention they got. I assume you're not doing that.
No, we decided right up front that people were going to get in the order they applied in.
Yeah.
And we were going to manage that through the process.
Beautiful.
The only thing that will take somebody out of that order is if it's an incomplete package.
Yeah.
And then we'll set it aside until we have the information.
There you go.
Makes sense.
We're working with customers, non-customers. The only thing we're requiring for non-customers is that they open a deposit account for us to put the funds into at the end.
Of course. It makes sense.
All right. So they'll welcome you over there. Thank you for your call.
Yes, tell your boss. So people like DJs, caterers, hairdressers, daycare workers, that have a small daycare with no employees in their home. Which of these offerings should they be applying for? The unemployment, the EIDL loan, this one that's available tomorrow?
Yeah, so you can apply for both the EIDL and the PPP. The PPP is just lowered by the EIDL amount. So you can do both.
Okay, that's not how it was.
That's a new change.
That's smart. So you should apply for both, and then you'll be deducted by the emergency disaster.
All right, so sole proprietors, if they're paying themselves more than $100,000, that's the cap, right? So they get back down.
Absolutely.
So if they applied for the $100,000, let's just say for this discussion,
with what? Applied for with what?
For the PPP, right?
Okay.
For the $100,000, and they also applied for the EIDL. You'd back that $10,000 off of the benefit that resulted from the PPP loan. Is that what I understand?
Yes. So the they need to go through and figure out how they can show what their wage was and use their bookkeeping, use their expenses. They can also apply for mortgage insurance and utilities.
So it's not
2.5 times whatever we figure out the average wage is. That should be forgivable if it's used by June 30.
Okay, so that's not a bad deal. Again, with that $100,000 example, what does that come out to? $8,300 or something a month. You multiply that by 2.5. You're at what, 21 grand? I don't do math well in my head.
That's about right.
You back out the 10 grand. Both get forgiven if you follow the rules. So
yeah, and the equal is $10,000 grant that you could apply for right up front with the loan. If both work for you,
yeah,
and you have the time to do both, you should.
Yeah. So you got to do some
very
math.
Smart.
There. You got to see. Some people may be eligible for unemployment benefits. That was the question on the text line. Yeah.
DOL stuff is a little bit outside of my purview.
That's all right. We appreciate your time. It was longer than we had expected. You're a great guy. Thanks for the support here through this time.
Thank you so much, Jim.